Now, America, with Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen. And now, Archbishop Sheen.
I must tell you that I was once giving a lecture in upstate New York, and I went into the barber shop in the afternoon of the town, and I got a haircut. The barber did not recognize me, and he said, "Are you going to that lecture tonight by Archbishop Sheen?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you have a ticket?" I said, "No, I don't." Well, he said, "All the tickets have been sold, so you probably will have to stand." I said, "You know, it's a peculiar thing that every time I go to hear that man talk, I always have to stand." As you know, we are taking about 13 views of America, some of its foibles and excesses, and trying to bring a little bit of judgment in order to perfect our country. Now, I can introduce this subject by a story which points the subject up very well. In the city of Brooklyn, there was a judge holding court. His name was Dunn. The witness on the stand was a stupid one. Not that all stupid witnesses are from Brooklyn, mind you, but this one was. And the prosecuting attorney asked a question like this: "Were you at the corner of 4th and Elm the day of the accident?" He said, "Who? Me?" "Yes, you. Did you notice whether or not the woman was seriously injured?" "Who? Me?" And finally, the prosecuting attorney said, "Did the ambulance come to care for the wounded woman?" "Who? Me?" Well, by that time, the prosecuting attorney was exasperated. He said, "Certainly you. Why do you think you're here?" He said, "I'm here to see justice done." Judge Dunn says, "Who? Me?" Our subject, therefore, is justice and honesty. Because today, America is goofing off a lot of work. We are not altogether an honest people. So let me tell you some facts about dishonesty in our national life. And then when I do that, then I'll make some judgment about them. First of all, cheating. There were 41,000 applicants for MD degrees or for medical schools. But only 1,400 were admitted. Maybe it was 14,000. But at any rate, a small proportion. Now, some of the students who were taking the examination tore out pages in the library books, pages that were essential for reading, in order that others who had not those pages would fail. Other students took acid and poured it into the experiments of other students in order to spoil their scientific work and thus make them fail, and they would have a better chance. There was a boy in Brooklyn who wrote a paper on honesty and then stole the regents' examinations and sold the examination questions to students for a high price. That's cheating. Then shoplifting in America. Did you know that there are $10 million a day stolen in the stores of the United States. Think of how much prices have to increase to make up for that $10 million. One woman and her daughter confessed that they had stolen $86,000 in 1 year. Another woman who was arrested for shoplifting had $541 in cash in her purse and a bank book, $42,000. There's a humorous side to this, too. There was a woman who kept a cat in a New York apartment, and when a cat dies, where do you bury it in New York? So she called up a friend of hers in Westchester and said, may I bury the cat in your backyard? So she put her cat in a box and decided to buy a handkerchief or two for the lady who was going to give her the burial plot. While she was buying the handkerchief, someone stole the box. She reported it to the floor walker, and the floor walker said, well, very often, if the women who steal these things, they go up to the ladies' room, so let's go up there to see if we can find it. And they went up to the ladies' room, and there was a woman flat on the floor, fainted alongside of a dead black cat. And there was a convention of model young men, boys, belonging to a model boys' society. They were brought in a busload to a certain city, and they went into a shop after they had received due praise for being the middle American model youth. One of them was caught shoplifting. When he was caught, all the other boys that were in the bus dropped what they had stolen. The manager of the store said, why did you do this? They said, we made a bet before we came as to who could steal the most. Let's take vandalism. It costs New York City $1,167,000 a year to repair the vandalism in the New York parks. Did you know that it costs New York City $2 million to wipe the graffiti off our subways? And then, as regards other form of vandalism, it's so unusual that I'm going to read this to you. It is from the New York Times. And it's about a farm that existed in New Jersey for the benefit of the children. When the tiny city farm known as the Children's Barnyard was closed yesterday, only a pigeon with a broken wing was left behind. And this morning the crippled bird was found smashed to death. Just as many other animals at the farm had been tortured, maimed, and killed. For nearly 8 years, the little barnyard in the center of the city had housed a collection of animals, chickens and ducks, rabbits, pigs, turkeys, geese, sheep, goats, and ponies, for the joy of city children. But during recent months, all these animals have been killed or tortured. Ducks with broken legs, chickens strangled, geese with their eyes gouged out, rabbits stomped to death, puppies stolen and killed. And this morning, George was found dead too, smashed to death with hurled apples stolen from a nearby tree with stones. Lonesome George was the duck. And the manager of the farm said we didn't move him with others. I suppose we should have, but we just thought we'd have a little bit of life left in the barnyard, and now there is none. We live in a sick society. Then in addition to this kind of vandalism, falsity in advertising. Here's a boy, 17 years of age. He's in a group where there are boys and girls. No girl comes near him. Then he puts some gunk on his hair. And immediately he's surrounded with 18 girls that leave all the other boys. Is that true? Then advertising. Well, such as is pointed out by William Robbins of the New York Times. William Robbins has a chapter on the Chiquita banana. He said in order to raise the price of bananas, there was a Chiquita banana stamped with a little red tag, which helped raise the price of those bananas far above their own value. I can remember talking to a manager of one of the largest hotels in America. And he told me that they had a woman in the cash cage who was stealing money. They caught her. They confronted her with the fact of stealing. In fact, she was caught red-handed. And the union said to the hotel, you can't discharge this woman. If you discharge her, we're going to have a general strike on the hotel. For 3 months, the litigation and dispute went on, and finally the union won. What was their argument? Did you ever tell that woman it was wrong to steal? The hotel admitted they hadn't. Told her it was wrong to steal. So now she's back again to the cash cage. Dishonesty in built-in obsolescence. Things get old and run out of repair and order very quickly. As Arthur Miller put it in his play, Death of a Salesman, once in my life I would like to own something outright before it's broken. I'm always in a race with the junkyard. I just finished paying for my car and it's on its last legs. The refrigerator consumes belt like a demon. They time those things. They time them so that when you're finally paid up, they're all washed up. And then the repairman comes and he says, oh, I wouldn't repair that. Buy a new one. And in contrast to that, think of the honesty we used to have in America. It's hard for the young people today to believe that you could leave a bicycle in their front yard for a month and nobody would steal it. In small towns, nobody locked the door. Abraham Lincoln, you remember, was postmaster in a small town in Illinois. Washington closed the post office. Lincoln went from one little business to the other and failed in everything. Finally, he received a letter from Washington that an inspector was coming. And that $17 and a few cents was due to the post office in Washington. A friend went to Lincoln and said, I know you're broke. You haven't anything. I'll loan you the $17 and a few cents so you'll not be put in jail. Lincoln said, no, don't worry. When the inspector came, Lincoln went to a cigar box. And in it were pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters. The exact amount that people had paid for stamps He had kept the money all that time. Gave it to Washington. We're supposed to be very civilized people. But I have a missionary friend in Borneo. He was telling me there that the people live in long apartments built in trees, and there's no dividing line between the apartment houses. There's no dividing line to the rivers, but everyone has a section where he may fish. One night, he said, he was explaining commandments to these people in the apartment house. And he came to the commandment, thou shalt not steal. And they said, does anybody steal? What is stealing? Well, he said, if I picked up this gourd and took it back to my hut, that would be stealing. Does anybody in the world steal? Now, this is a universal condition in the United States, not among all people, of course, but among enough to make us worry. Now let us go into the analysis of honesty and justice, particularly justice. Why do we have a right to private property? We have a right to private property for this reason. Simply because I have a soul on the inside, I am free. Fish are not free, they have no spirit, like man. So I can call myself my own. Now, because I can call myself my own, I ought to have some external, economic guarantee of human freedom. And what is that? The external guarantee, that's the internal, the soul, spirit. The external guarantee of freedom is private property. I am, I have. No artist can work without owning his own tools. Scholar has to have his own books. You want your own pots and pans in the kitchen? So property is therefore the economic guarantee of human liberty. Notice that in a nation and among a people where there's no belief in the Spirit, what follows? There's no private property. In Russia, once you eliminate the spiritual, you eliminate private property. This is the basis of property. Now, why then is it wrong to steal? Well, how often we associate property with persons. For example, a person will think of a grandmother saying, oh, she's always losing her glasses. See how we link up the person with the property? Or John Brown, oh yes, he lives in that brown house, doesn't he? And Jack, oh yes, he's got that red bicycle. Or someone else, he's got that fine ranch, or 100 cattle, whatever it happens to be. So that person is associated with property, and because, therefore, it is associated with property, when you begin to eliminate personal property, you begin to destroy the person. Person and property go together, or put it as life and property go together. Our Constitution guarantees us, the preamble to the Constitution, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I've forgotten whether it was Hamilton or Adams that said it should be life, liberty, and property, which would have been a good idea. But life and property go together. Now, in our civilization, where you get a disrespect for human life, you get a disrespect for property. What is the disrespect for property in our life, in our present civilization? Let's take noon. Let's take dusk. Let's take dawn. Let's take midnight in the cosmic clock. Noon, 6 million Jews killed by Hitler. At the midday of life, no respect for life. The dusk, euthanasia. Kill off the old people. Dawn, abortion. Midnight, atomic bomb. As soon as life begins to be valued, property ceases to be valued. Now, the right to property is not absolute. One must always distinguish between the right and the use of property. The right is personal. The use of property is social. For example, you have a right to an automobile. You may not drive that automobile over your neighbor's lawn. Your use of that automobile is socially controlled. You may have a right, you certainly do have a right to a rooster, but you can't keep it in an apartment waking up everybody at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that is why excess wealth, the wealth of corporations particularly, should rightfully be controlled by society. And that is why there must be a regulation of property by the state. Now that's the philosophy of property. I got a little clock down here. Oh my goodness gracious alive. I've gone so far and said so little. So now let me bring in a word about the restitution of property. We have, Angel, leave it there for a moment. The angel was going to clean my blackboard, but since I do not have much time, the angel can rest. Here is an expression, res clamat domino. Everything cries out for its owner. Your dog is stolen. The dog will try to get back home. Cat, get back home. A homing toad will sometimes travel 50 yards to get back again to its home and to its owner. Therefore, whenever there is anything that is stolen, there has to be a restitution of that thing. It's not enough to be forgiven. Suppose that every time I did wrong, I had to put a nail in the board. Every time I was forgiven, I pulled the nail out. There'd still be holes in that board. I've got to fill them up. And if I've stolen anything, I have to restore that particular thing. For example, I steal money. I have to give that money back. It is not mine. Res clamat domino. Everything is crying out for its owner. So reparation is absolutely essential for the continuation and for the practice of justice. And we have this deeply ingrained in us. Somehow or other, atonement has to be made. See how our world is built? Suppose we're unjust to nature, and we are, by pouring the waste products of life and industry into our rivers and streams. What happens? Nature judges us. Nature says, from now on, you may not swim in this river or lake. You'll be afraid to boat on it. There's justice, retribution. If in our baseball games we have an umpire who would penalize us, for example, if we threw a beanball and we're thrown out of the game for a beanball. Football, we have umpires. Yes, referees. Someone is offside, penalized 5 yards. We have prisons. Why? Because men are paying back what they owe. If we have an internal revenue service in which there is an account given of all that we owe to the government, and there is justice to be practiced in the benefits that we have received, if we have judges on our courts that mete out retribution for crimes, if we have any manner of computer, or if we have tapes which record the things that we have said and the things that we have done, do you think that we're living in a universe where there shall not be at the end of life a referee, an empire, a revenue service, whereby we will render to every man that which is his due? A plea, therefore, for honesty once again in our American life. We were a just people. We can be just again, and if we are, America will be great. Thank you, and God love you.